This attack is eerily realistic.
Everything is sexist. Everything is racist. And you have to point it all out.
Stellar Blade, guys. Have you heard of it? Surely you must have. It's currently being talked about all over the internet as a video game in 2024 that is, refreshingly, entirely unafraid of showing off its attractive female main character. Stellar Blade was announced as Project Eve back in 2019, then for the PS4 and Xbox One. By 2021, it was revealed that the development had shifted to the PlayStation 5, and that it would be a timed PS5 exclusive. I remember seeing its previous iterations at old E3s and stuff, and remarking back then that there was no way this was a game being made by Western developers, because the main character was hot. Your average person is getting pretty tired of woke nonsense today in 2024, but back in 2019 and 2021, hyper-progressive influence over video games was at its peak. As an example of what I mean, here's a reaction to some old Project Eve stuff by a podcast on the notable gaming outlet Digital Foundry.
The character designs and the character renderings, character models. So let's say that they're kind of from a bygone era in some ways, in many ways maybe. But what's kind of interesting to me is that they use what I guess affectionately is called by people doll-like. If you think of classic, like that are live designs, right? They were kind of action figure-y, kind of, dolls, basically. So it's kind of interesting to see this mix of, I shouldn't say classic character designs, but character models from a bygone era put into a modern game.
It is weird. It feels a little out of place, I think.
Well, the game feels a bit out of place in some ways.
I know you were talking about the character from a bygone era. I do think the character model was actually like very distracting in not a good way, because like with the camera angles chosen, it just felt like this game seems like a game that came out in like 002 in terms of its, like character design. It's like a bit old and not flattering, I don't think, for a modern audience. In comparison to something like Forspoken, which has, yes, it has a much more realistic looking character designs. It's not these hyper proportioned something or another's, but it also seemed, a bit more grounded in a way that I found much more appealing than what we saw here.
From a general standpoint, I do agree with you, but I do think Project Eve, when it comes to facial construction, it does have some merit though, because the characters look very different. It's just that once you go, neck down, there's a lot of issues on display.
That's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem.
Yeah, you heard that right. These reanimated soy golems, more commonly known as professional games journalists, chided Stellar Blade for featuring an unrealistically attractive female lead, and compared it to fucking Forspoken, which, if you watched my video on that nightmare, you already know how bad it was. The claim that the game belongs in the 2000s, yeah dude, that's why it's so refreshing. I remember back in the day making fun of games that were, quite frankly, kind of mediocre, that also used a sexy girl on the front cover in order to make sales. But a mediocre sex-stuffed game is actually a breath of fresh air in today's climate, where most new games have characters that aren't sexy at all, while the actual quality of the game is even worse. It's not just Forspoken, though that's the obvious go-to. EA's recent AAA release, Immortals of Aveum, is shaping up to be a massive failure. Mary Jane looking like Spider-Man's mom was probably one of the most prolific memes of 2023. And Suicide Squad. How do you have a full 10 years of new technology between Harley Quinn's last appearance and now, and still make a strictly uglier version of the character? I don't even mean in terms of like, she's not as hot as she was in the old game. That's obviously true. But even like the quality of the animation, the clothing, the lighting, it's all significantly worse. Now this is what looks like it comes from the 2000s, specifically from a bad FMV in the GameCube era or something. Some retard took Stellar Blade's main character out into New York and got some on-the-ground reactions, and these actually blew my fucking mind. Check this nonsense out.
Stellar Blade! She looks 14. And with the side ponytail too, girl. She needs a bow.
She looks like she's 16.
Yeah, I think I actually spoke about this take in the Fat Activist video recently. The main reason these people think an attractive woman is underage is because the last time they were thin is when they were a kid.
It's perfectly fine to have an animation style, especially in a game, but when you're appropriating someone else's image and then changing it, it becomes an issue.
Oh, it's now an issue when you appropriate somebody else's image? How about every single race-swapped character in the past decade?
We're working on the physics of the way her body moves rather than the physics of the actual game, which you can see in there does not look great. That's how you know that you've messed up.
Jesus. Seems like they're over-sexualizing her.
Yeah, definitely over-sexualizing her.
Stellar Blade.
That's the title of a game that would do this. That's the title of a game that would do this. I think it's just men that's never touched a woman in their life not knowing what the fuck they look like. And so they're like, this is what women in my video games always looked like. So why are we changing it? It's like, because it's not real, bro.
Yeah, every one of these people pretty much said the same thing, that the main character is unrealistic. The thing is, she's not. Korean model Shin Jae-eun was the body scan for the character. This is a person who exists in reality. She is definitionally not unrealistic. And they didn't really change her that much or anything. When you overlay the character onto the actress's modeling pics, you can tell it's pretty accurate. She is a lot closer to the ideal than your average woman, sure, but that's a good thing. We do want attractive people in our games, don't we? Well, let's think about that question for a minute. The soy boys on that Digital Foundry panel all gave the same basic take, that in the modern progressive era, sex no longer sells the way it did back in the 2000s. Gaming has grown up, moved beyond that gaudy, trashy, misogynistic nonsense. But that just doesn't seem to be the case in reality. The overwhelming amount of support that Stellar Blades received, specifically because of its sex appeal, goes against the progressive claim, and the progs are not happy that the gamers have rejected their narrative. For example, this guy says, the thirst trap Stellar Blade looks awful with very outdated graphics, and it obviously uses sex to sell because they lack real talent. Hold on, lacking real talent? Have you seen all of these shitty games? But more importantly, I thought sex didn't sell anymore. When developers resort to sex to sell their game, it usually means the game is lacking. Yeah, this was pretty good logic back in the day, but why is it that games nowadays have such butt-ugly fucking people in them and they still suck? I pointed this out on Twitter in a tweet that got a little bit of traction. How are all the wokoids going to complain about a hot girl in a video game when they're all over Baldur's Gate 3's nudity? Most people agreed with me, but I received this reply from a brain-dead trans activist. I don't get it. I whip my dick out at a urinal and everyone's cool with it, but then I do it at Red Lobster and get kicked out. No one has any consistency. Like, for those that don't get it, it's the comparison. I don't care about people playing the games, but just going, but Baldur's Gate 3 has sex scenes and nudity misses the fucking point completely. He's complaining that people will take issue with a game that pushes the sex sells gimmick of thongs and tits out at all times, but are okay with Baldur's Gate 3 having just any nudity. The comparison is ridiculous. Now, I want to examine this comparison in detail. This person is saying that sexuality in Baldur's Gate 3 is akin to whipping your dick out at a urinal, while sexuality in Stellar Blade is akin to whipping your dick out in a Red Lobster. The comparison serves to highlight that sexuality is appropriate in one instance and not in another. The complaint is that the sexuality of the character in Stellar Blade is always on display during both sexual and non-sexual scenes, while Baldur's Gate 3 simply has sex scenes. What this person fails to realize is that in Baldur's Gate 3, you can strip down naked and run through the game in the nude anytime you like, and also that a lot of the armor you get certainly serves to show off the assets of the various characters. So this complaint is retarded. The immediate explanation I came to was, of course, safe horny, a topic I've already covered pretty extensively online. Every time one of these people made a complaint about unrealistic bodies in gaming or whatever the fuck, their bio or their likes or whatever else would be filled with the most degenerate shit imaginable. And safe horny is basically just a political justification for their hypocrisy. My politics are good, therefore I can indulge in problematic content, and be protected from influence with the proper thinking. Your politics are bad, therefore your sexuality is oppressive and must be restricted. But I can hear my friend V screaming off in the distance, don't you dare bring up that lefty bullshit, Dev. So let's go down a slightly different route this time. My other friend, Taftaj, replied to my tweet with the key that unlocks the whole thing. The answer is obvious. Pathological fear of straight male sexuality. Baldur's Gate 3 sex is gay as fuck. Think back to my recent video, The Queer Problem, where I talk about people appropriating the queer aesthetic, despite not actually being gay or trans, in order to make political statements and be a part of the in-group. When Taftaj says Baldur's Gate 3 sex is gay as fuck, that is what she means. Even straight sex in Baldur's Gate 3 is gay in that it adopts a queer aesthetic. The sex is either shallow and lustful or goofy and ridiculous. Contrast that with Mass Effect's famous sex scenes. They're kinda janky now, yeah, but they're the culmination of a growing relationship over the course of the entire game, on the eve of the final battle. There's an emotional arc present. But that's straight sex, not gay sex, even if the sex you're having is gay. Because in the context of what Taftaj is saying, straight sex is serious, straightforward, titillating, and fundamentally male, while gay sex is comedic, degenerate, empty, and fundamentally queer. This lens creates problems for the progressives that they have yet to come to grips with. This next bit isn't about video games or Stellar Blade, but it's the best example I've got to illustrate this. JoCat is an animator on YouTube with over 1 million subscribers. His art style is that simplistic, pastel colors, thick lines kind of stuff that young progs love. He's quite progressive in his politics himself. And although he's entirely straight, he is queer-coded. He's doing the queer aesthetic thing. JoCat went viral for this animation, the audio originally being cut from one of his streams, and he animated it because he thought it was funny. It's only 30 seconds long, so I'll just play the whole thing.
Sad that there's no muscly girls in here. Well, I mean, yeah, but, you know, sure, I like to joke around and talk about how, oh, I'm strong women all the time, but that's not the only girls I like. I like big girls, pretty kitty girls, really witty girls, singing ditty girls. I like the leggy girls with the nice thighs. I like a good chest, no matter what size. I like the belly folds, I like the six-packs, really tall queens, and the short stacks. From the mild girls to the wild girls. You got style, girls, make them round, girls. Yeah, I just really like girls.
Yeah, he got cancelled for this, by online progressives specifically. It wasn't waves upon waves of rightoids that were coming after him for supporting trans rights or something, though there were a couple of those. No, the bulk of the harassment was overwhelmingly from his own political camp, because he was cringe and sexually objectifying women. And he was a sexual harasser, apparently, and a bunch of other shit that no one had any proof of. He was doxxed, he was sent death threats, he was sent threatening packages in the mail, his parents were targeted, his girlfriend was targeted, and it got to the point that he simply decided to leave the internet. I want to make this absolutely clear, guys. A man was bullied off the internet for being straight. I'm not going to go too deep into this story. All the harassment he received is cataloged and out there if you care to dig it up yourself. But basically, JoCat cultivated an audience of uwu heckin' valid zoomer progs who turned on him basically over vibes. And then I saw Vosh's take. Yes, the video's still coming. Where he says, normalize straight dudes being gay for women. This is what Taftaj was getting at when she said that Baldur's Gate 3's sex was gay, even when it was straight. Straight dudes can't be gay for women unless being gay refers to a specific aesthetic. And we can use JoCat's video to discover exactly what that aesthetic is. Let me go on one quick side tangent first, though. There is actually an inverse of this tendency on the right wing too, where stuff that is straight is recontextualized as gay. Remember the whole tomboy abs thing with Sargon and Academic Agent? I'm pretty sure those guys didn't call it gay specifically, but I'm not too sure that they would object to that framing. And you can absolutely find people online making that point more explicitly. I feel like if you find a girl with abs attractive, you're gay. If you eat your girl out, you're gay. Like, what the fuck, dude? Thankfully, this stuff on the right isn't nearly as common as its equivalent on the left. With JoCat, we've now got the cipher. We have a lens through which we can view a lot of these other interactions. When the progs complain about big boobs in anime, or cute female characters in video games, or petite women who do cosplay, they always kick up a big stink about it. They'll call you an alt-right, gamergate, man-baby, chud porn addict for consuming whatever it is that you happen to like. In fact, porn addict used to refer to people who watch too much porn and had a real problem. But retards on Twitter are now using it to refer to any male who watches anything heteronormative. And that is the problem. Big boobs in anime and cute females in video games and petite women doing cosplay, they all cater to the male gaze. They're not safe horny, they're problematic horny. They're heteronormative. The sexual content of these things does not serve to deconstruct the patriarchy, so to the progressive, they're problematic, they're exploitative. But watching Joel in One Golf take it in the ass in Last of Us 2, having sex with a bear in Baldur's Gate 3, this is queer-coded. It doesn't cater to the male gaze. It's deconstructing our patriarchal understanding of sexuality. It's centering experiences other than the straight cis male. And so it's empowering, it's liberating. I think that this is a better explanation of safe horny than what was in my previous videos. Even going all the way back to Link in Tears of the Kingdom, their complaint during that game's peak was that despite what they view as Link's queer coding, he was still ultimately straight and cis and in a relationship with Princess Zelda. For the progs, this was betrayal. Link's queer coding was a promise to them, and Nintendo failed to fulfill it. I personally believe that Stellar Blade will be the tipping point on all this nonsense. Its financial success, as well as the success of other smaller titles that are willing to have traditionally attractive people in them again, like Lies of P, for example, which is the game you've been watching this whole time, will show the developers that no matter how woke your game is, no matter how much you talk down to gamers, or shame them, or browbeat them, or whatever else, we're still the ones with the money. Okay, you can call us bigots for not buying the slop, but I'm still not giving you my money. And before you ask, yes, this is happening. Take the white pill, the tides are turning. For example, the next part of the Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming out soon, and Tifa and Aeris are yet again attractive women. Yeah, the progs are still whining about the male gaze and whatever the fuck else, but the gamers will vote with their wallets, and there's nothing progressives can do about it. The only thing left to do at this point is hope that the Italian Senate doesn't get wind of this again. Anyway, Stellar Blade's coming out in a few months. If you support this sort of thing, make sure you buy it. We've got to show the developers that these are the kind of games that we want. The video game industry is already going through a massive crisis because nobody's buying the AAA slop anymore. Now is the time for us to lead them back into the fold. Alright guys, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed. If you're seeing this video on release, I'll be over on the Archcast right when it comes out. And after that, my editor Dave and I will be finishing up our Mario Wonder 100% run. So come on over and say hi, I'll see you there. Have a good one, I love you.